close to the Skogafoss waterfall is the Skogar Museum. Now, it may look small, but this is a great place to get a good sense of what it was like to be an early settler in South Iceland. And based on these stories, it definitely wasn't easy, that's for sure. Now, what's interesting about these ships, and to get this picture, I went up to the second floor and just looked down to really get a whole shot of the ship. What's interesting is they were built pretty shallow, and you can see it's not really that deep or high. And building the ship shallow allowed the early settlers to pull them out of the water like a zodiac. Now, due to the lack of building material, in other words, wood, the early settlers needed to rely on driftwood from Siberia, and what surprised me was when the tour guide mentioned South America. So rely on driftwood from South America even to use in building ships or other structures. And farmers would actually go to the beach and claim the driftwood. And if you do go to Iceland, you'll see there aren't a lot of trees, so that explains a lot of these stories. Now, this doorknob is part of that story of the treasure chest that is behind the waterfall, Skogafoss. And this one puts a smile on a lot of people's faces because you think you might actually be the one to find the treasure chest. The legend is that one of the first settlers from Norway hid the chest behind the waterfall before he died. And the legend goes on to say that a young man was able to find it, but before he could pull it out of the water, it slipped out of his hands and he was just left with the handle. And the handle is what you see in the picture. This handle was used as used on a church door for several years, and now it's in this museum. So if you want to see part of the legend of the chest in the waterfall, you have to go to the museum. Now, these clothes. Honestly, life was hard, and I'm not saying that because of the way the clothes look. There wasn't a lot of natural fruit, just blueberries. The early settlers had sheep and sheep milk, but they also relied a lot on fishing to survive, and hence the clothing in the picture. The fishermen had leather clothes that were soaked in oil for waterproofing. And supposedly, this is what the guide said, they took a bath twice a year. So when I heard about this, I said, I definitely would not be one of these fishermen, that's for sure. It's definitely a hard life, wow. Fishing also included whaling, and whale bones were sometimes used as furniture. In terms of the fish, they were left out to dry, and baked bread. Now, this is another reason I would have a trouble being an early settler because I love bread. Baked bread was more for holidays. So definitely not an easy life. Yeah, because of the baked bread. Yep, that's right. So here's a picture of some of the houses, and honestly, I don't know how people survived without heat. These farmhouses had many little rooms to conserve the heat, and the beds were fairly close together. I'll post a video of the inside of the house, which will show that the beds were fairly small. So the comment made by the guide about people needing to sleep upright makes sense, because unless you're a child, I don't see how you would fit into the beds. Regardless, This museum, Skogar Museum in South Iceland, is a great glimpse to get an understanding of the past and see the resilience of the early settlers.